Tonight on CFTK-TV News, Donald Trump continues to talk about Canada becoming the 51st state. The federal Conservatives are the most popular they've been in a long time, and BC's new forest minister just visited the Northwest.
Northwest BC's only television news team. We are CFTK-TV News.
Good evening, I'm Cal Baslett, and here's what's making the news in the Northwest and beyond for today. The newly appointed BC Forest Minister was visiting the Northwest this week and said the forest industry is looking hopeful in the region. CFTK-TV's Jaylene Matthews has the details.
BC Forest Minister Ravi Parmar has been meeting with local workers, community leaders, and First Nations leaders in the lead up to the BC Natural Resources Forum to talk about the future of forestry.
I know that the closure of the Skeena sawmills and the uncertainty certainly hurt this community, and I think it was perfect to see the light, the sun shining, because I'm feeling optimistic, as is the community, about the future of forestry for this community in particular, but also for the region as well.
Parmar's very first decision he made as Minister of Forests was to approve a 10-year license tied to the Skeena sawmills for the Kitsim-Kalim First Nation.
So I know that they are in the early days of exploring what needs to be done. It's an older mill, so certainly more work is going to be needed to be done to be able to get it up to the standards that it needs to be able to deliver for workers and for families.
The Kitsim-Kalim First Nation purchased the mill last spring for $14.5 million and required that transfer of 10 years in order to move forwards.
This was just one of many conversations I expect to have with the local nation about finding ways to be able to get the fiber to that mill, and hope that there'll be opportunities to be able to explore value-added aspects of it as well. We do ship a lot of raw logs from this area, and I know that the reason for that is there isn't much in the form of value-added opportunities, and I'm hoping to change that in my time as Minister of Forests.
Parmar will continue his tour of the North and plans to build local partnerships through forest landscape planning tables.
Looking forward to actually being at the table, at the FLP tables with industry, First Nations, and local leaders. I'm looking forward to talking about the work of the BC Wildfire Service as we plan for the 2025 wildfire season. I'm looking forward to talking about BC timber sales and the work that we're going to be doing to upgrade and make sure that it's delivering for workers. And the reality is I'm going to be looking forward to being on the ground, talking to people. Victoria, where I'm from, is not the center of the universe. When it comes to forestry, it's all of these forestry dependent communities. So it was really important for me to kick 2025 off with what I think is probably one of the most robust tours that a Minister of Forests has ever done.
For CFTK-TV News in Terrace, I'm Jaylene Matthews.
A new announcement has emerged from the Prince Rupert Port Authority, letting it be known that they have made a new addition to their board of directors. The person in question being added to the board is named Jean-Jacques Roust, and he has spent over 4 decades as a private sector executive, with his experiences including work in sectors like logistics, transportation, chemical manufacturing, as well as international trade. Roust was nominated by the Port User Nominating Committee for the position. Turning now to more shocking comments made by U.S. President-elect Donald Trump, he's wrapping up the rhetoric about making Canada the 51st state. CTV's Rob Buffum recaps how this comment about using economic force is sparking plenty of backlash.
Premier Eby pushing back on President-elect Trump's calls to acquire Canada.
Canadians are proud. I'm proud to be Canadian. We are not becoming the 51st state.
Eby's comments right around when Trump was saying this about his desire to annex Canada and how he'd do it.
Economic force, because Canada and the United States, that would really be something. You get rid of that artificially drawn line, and you take a look at what that looks like.
That would horrify me. I don't want to be the 51st state. I am so proud to be Canadian.
I think they're forgetting history, and I do believe they lost the last war with Canada.
Canada is obviously facing a grave situation with Donald Trump, even to the point of calling it an existential crisis.
A day after announcing he's resigning, Prime Minister Trudeau blasted back online, tweeting, "There isn't a snowball's chance in hell that Canada would become part of the United States." The escalating war of words 2 weeks from Trump's inauguration, when he's promised to bring in massive trade tariffs. Eby isn't going to Trump's inauguration, but is planning a trip to the States with other premiers.
Make our case to decision makers in the United States that the proposed tariffs from the president-elect will mean a significant increase in prices for Americans around things like homes.
Adding to the crisis, Parliament is prorogued until March 24th, leaving the fate of various bills and federal funding for BC programs potentially up in the air.
But I'll be blunt and frank in saying that we saw a lot of announcements of funding that weren't delivered to British Columbia.
As for Trudeau's successor, former BC Premier Christy Clark is rumored as one, someone Eby says he's butted heads with but would welcome in the race.
Ms. Clark will bring the discussion of BC issues and a BC focus that other candidates will have to respond to.
Among the growing list of other issues, including threats to Canada's sovereignty.
Coming up next, the CRA is attempting to propose changes that may never see the light of day. Welcome back. While Canada's leadership is currently in question, one thing that isn't are the concerns over those tariff threats from Donald Trump. With less than 2 weeks until Trump's inauguration, BC industry leaders are bracing for what it could mean for the local economy. CTV's Kevin Chirac has that story.
President-elect Donald Trump not backing down on his message to Canada.
Why are we supporting a country 200 billion plus a year?
This comes after Trump promised to order a 25% tariff on Canadian exports to the U.S. Major industries, including forestry, bracing for impact.
There's currently an average of 14% softwood lumber tariffs going on the board on our products right now. So does that mean it now becomes 39% as of January 20th? We don't know that answer.
Jeff Bromley represents around 9,000 forestry workers in BC alone and says about 3/4 of his workers' products is exported to the U.S.
I've told them to prepare because we could be suffering incremental layoffs.
Thousands of oil and gas workers also feeling the heat. The Canadian Association of Petroleum Producers CEO telling CTV News a tariff on Canadian energy starting in January would spike energy costs for American consumers, increasing gasoline prices and the cost to heat their homes right in the middle of winter. In Canada, a 25% tariff could lead to a decrease in oil and gas production, as suddenly selling to our biggest customer would become uneconomic. And some believe no industry is immune.
54% of the exports from BC go to the U.S., and about 10% of our employment is tied to our exports to the U.S. It affects consumers, it affects workers, it affects businesses, it really affects everybody.
All this a day after Canada's Prime Minister announced he's leaving, with Parliament shut down till late March.
Essentially, we're a rudderless ship. You know, who's leading the ship into a tempest, a major storm?
Kevin Chirac, CTV News.
With the Liberal Party in turmoil, the federal Conservatives are surging to a level of popularity that hasn't been seen this century. As CTV's Reagan Hasegawa explains, the Tories now have unprecedented support from BC voters.
More than half of British Columbians would vote Conservative if a federal election were held today. Those results staggering, even to political pundits.
54% of decided voters saying I would vote for the Conservatives. Stephen Harper was forming governments, 2 minorities, 1 majority government, and never had this level of support.
So why are most British Columbians now leaning to the right?
There's a lot of people who seem to be dissatisfied with what the center-left is offering, either in the form of the Liberals or the NDP.
I just can't keep living here with the cost that everything is. I just can't keep doing it, so I have to do what's right for myself, and that's to get my cheaper rent, my cheaper groceries, and that's, as far as I understand, that's what voting for Pierre will get me.
I'm First Nation. None of them help my people. Why should I vote?
The poll suggests the Tories are leading across the country, with the exception of Quebec.
It certainly suggests that the situation for Justin Trudeau was untenable. It was going to be very difficult to come back from the levels that the Liberal Party has right now.
The survey was conducted on the weekend before the Prime Minister officially resigned.
It's not because things are going wrong, that's not his fault, you know? Another one is going to come, it's not going to be any better.
But is it too late for the Liberals to bounce back?
The most important issue is to establish an emotional connection with voters. I think we see a little bit of that with the Pierre Poilievre Conservatives, very quick, easy to memorize slogans.
And experts say a good campaign could still change the political landscape before voters head to the polls. Reagan Hasegawa, CTV News, Vancouver.
Now that Justin Trudeau has paused Parliament, any legislation not yet finalized will essentially go belly up. But that hasn't stopped the Canada Revenue Agency from enacting proposed tax changes that may never actually become law. CTV's Ben Bilger explains.
And it's time for a reset.
When Justin Trudeau announced his impending resignation and prorogued Parliament, he left the Liberal legislative agenda to wither in the wind. That includes a motion which would hike the amount of capital gains tax Canadians pay on the sale of assets and investments.
If you believe that these proposals are likely not going to pass, then why blindly encourage taxpayers to comply?
It's a good question, especially considering that is exactly what the Canada Revenue Agency is doing. Parliamentary convention dictates that taxation proposals are effective as soon as the government tables a notice of Ways and Means motion. This approach provides consistency and fairness in the treatment of all taxpayers, the Department of Finance said in a statement. The CRA expects Canadians to file under the proposed changes rather than the existing law. With a spring election likely, the next government could scrap the planned increase altogether, but not before the April 30th tax deadline.
To the extent that this proposal doesn't become law and you filed on that basis, now you got to amend and you got to wait for a refund.
And that might be easier said than done.
Anybody who has experience with waiting for refunds from the CRA, it's not a pretty experience. It's a great game of wait.
People can try to file under last year's rules, but in the unlikely event the next government proceeds with the capital gains increase, they'll have to pay interest and face potential penalties. Ben Bilger, CTV News, Vancouver.
And now we take a look at both your nightly and weekly weather forecast. For the nightly forecast, the North Coast appears to be getting more rain and a low of 7 degrees. The Terrace-Kitimat area will most likely see a chance of showers with their low sitting at 1 degree, and the Bulkley Valley and Lakes District should deal with snow at a low of -7 degrees. Over to the weekly forecast now. The North Coast should be home to lots of rain as their high bounces from 8 to 5 degrees. In the Terrace-Kitimat area, the next week or so is most likely to see a combo of rain and snow, with the high shifting from 4 to -1 degree. And in the Bulkley Valley and Lakes District, the week for them will consist of a lot more snow and clouds, while their own high moves from 2 to -3 degrees. Checking out the highways now, visit Drive BC for the latest and up-to-date conditions, and as always, drive safe out there. On Highway 16, there is slippery sections, utility work, water pooling, limited visibility, road maintenance work, shoulder maintenance, bridge maintenance, and the Esk Ferry has been shut down for the season with the cable car now in effect. Highway 35 has slippery sections, and Highway 118 has some slippery sections too. Highway 37 has more slippery sections and compact snow. 37A also has compact snow. A travel advisory is in effect on the Nishka Highway, and the Telegraph Creek Road has slippery sections as well. And this is what the roads were looking like this afternoon around the region from the view of the province's highway cams. Still to come is a look into an investigation of human trafficking in BC. Welcome back. Next up is an investigation into the sinister world of sex trafficking hiding in plain sight across the whole province. A Vancouver Island mother shared the story of what happened to her then teenage daughter and has a warning for other parents. CTV's Michelle Bernauer has more and a caution: some may find the details disturbing.
It was a phone call that would trigger a Victoria area mom's real-life nightmare.
It'll always haunt me.
On the other end, this mom, who we are only identifying as Lori, heard the frightened voice of her 15-year-old daughter screaming for help, trying to get away from a man.
She was screaming out to have him let her go, and he was yelling to give the phone.
The line has suddenly went dead. At the time of the call, Lori's daughter, who was in ministry care and had been going through a difficult period, had run away. Lori only knew the teen was believed to be somewhere in Calgary. Her mom had no idea until that phone call her daughter was being trafficked. Lori immediately called Calgary police, who traced the number to a building in the city, but her daughter had already been moved.
I was just determined to find her.
Lori flew to Calgary.
Just searching and searching, had her photo, trying to ask people if they have seen her.
3 days after Lori got that disturbing phone call, Calgary police received a call about a distraught teenager in a parking lot. That teenager turned out to be Lori's daughter.
What I know is that she was banging on the window, screaming for help, in massive distraught.
Her daughter was taken to Alberta Children's Hospital.
I'm seeing her flailing all over the place in a complete state of trauma. All I wanted to do was just hold her. All of a sudden, she saw me standing there and screamed out, "Mama."
Lori says parents who don't think trafficking is happening or that it couldn't happen to their child should think again.
Oh, it absolutely can. Absolutely.
Sue Brown is with Justice for Girls and points out that children in care are disproportionately targeted by traffickers.
Those are the children that traffickers target because they know they're vulnerable. They know that the state is a terrible guardian. They know that group homes are staffed by people who don't have adequate training or resources to properly care for those kids.
But she emphasizes that anyone can fall victim and urges parents to be vigilant with their children's internet and social media.
We do see a lot more girls being groomed via online dating apps, for example. Snapchat is a fairly common one. Instagram is another one where there's a fair amount of exploitation happening.
Signs that a child is being groomed include a new boyfriend or friend showering them with gifts and love bombing them. Another warning sign, a child secretly creating new social media accounts.
And I'd say if you find a second cell phone or if a boyfriend's providing communications, that they're sort of trying to isolate the conversation or isolate the relationship through a phone that they tell their girlfriend to hide or not share with their parents, for example, that's a really kind of big red flag.
Years later, Lori would learn her daughter, who became addicted to meth, was also trafficked in Victoria. The trauma the teen experienced would change her forever.
It destroys your soul. You don't ever really come back.
Michelle Bruno-Rose, CTV News, Vancouver.
Announced yesterday, it was revealed that the BC Supreme Court appointed Victoria Gray as acting commissioner for conflict of interest for the Legislative Assembly. Gray was first appointed as conflict of interest commissioner in 2020. As commissioner, Gray will continue to have to provide confidential advice to members about obligations, oversee the disclosure process, and respond to allegations that a member has contravened the act and conduct an inquiry if necessary. Should robots have rights? Once upon a time, that would have seemed like a crazy question, but not anymore. UBC's law school is launching a new course trying to answer that very question. CTV's Mark McMahon has more details.
From friends to foes, robots have been in the public consciousness for some time. And with recent advancements in artificial intelligence, UBC is starting up a new course aimed at answering key questions, including, should robots have rights?
It's important to remember that it's not just living, breathing people that already have rights right now. Companies have rights, governments have rights and legal personality. We protect animals from harm, even though they don't have legal personality.
The course also explores what rights for robots would look like in practice.
So it's not such a huge leap to think that at some point what essentially are these autonomous digital systems, which could be manifested in a robot form, which they already are, would in fact, we would even benefit as people from having them be able to have some legal personality.
And given this is a course at a law school, there's also the exploration of how AI could improve access to the legal system. Law student Nathan Chung helped develop the course.
Professor Perrin reached out to us in class my first year, and he asked us, he was saying that, he had some ideas about starting a seminar. Students are a lot of times most exposed to the changing developments of AI, generative AI as well.
A lot of these questions deal with a future in which robots are as smart as humans, with some experts predicting that could happen within decades, if not sooner. Martin McMahon, CTV News, Vancouver.
Now we turn our attention to how the stock markets look today compared to yesterday. The Canadian dollar is down 25/10 of a cent, the price of gold is up $7, oil is down 93 cents, natural gas is up 20 cents, aluminum is up $4, in Toronto the TSX is up 121.79 points, the Venture Index is down 2.78, in New York the Dow Jones is up 106.84 and Nasdaq is down 10.80. Still ahead, Los Angeles has become a victim of California's rampant wildfires. Welcome back. It's quite a frightening time ahead for Los Angeles residents affected by out-of-control wildfires. Firefighters are scrambling to control the fires on the hillsides that are being fueled by powerful Santa Ana winds, and so far homes are burning, trees and power lines are down, and some residents even abandoned their cars after getting stuck trying to flee. And the winds are getting stronger. ABC's Matt Gutman reports.
Tonight, the Palisades fire burning homes and forcing thousands to run for their lives. The fire erupting in the Pacific Palisades foothills west of Los Angeles around 10:30 local time. Fire trucks racing to the scene, aircraft attacking it from above.
We threw everything we had at it really quick. We knew that if we didn't get it in 20 minutes, it would go to hundreds of acres.
But those efforts, no match for those devastating Santa Ana winds.
Just in the past couple of seconds since we've been here, this fire has crested this little hill we're on. The entire basin here is engulfed in flames. You can see it all the way down to the ocean behind me. That's where that light is. You can see that fire right now taking over that pile of leaves and debris, and behind us the bulk of that massive fire now taking over most of this northern part of Pacific Palisades.
The entire population of Pacific Palisades ordered to evacuate, traffic gridlocked for miles. Drivers stuck beside burning hillsides, some setting out on foot, vehicles catching fire. What's going on up there?
Houses on fire up on the corner and all the way down that street.
Megan Garman, her daughter, and their dog evacuating on foot after they abandoned their vehicle.
Well, the smoke just got really bad, so I just started packing up all of our stuff and we got in the car to go. And then all the cars were abandoned, so I had nowhere to go, so I just had to get out of my car and start walking. The smoke is so bad.
Authorities helping the family to safety. Actor James Woods posting this video of flames near his home.
We've got a lot of planes going over, dropping water, but
you can see how that wind is casting the embers, sending that fire right into that house just above that stand of trees in there.
Firefighters in an all-out battle to save this shopping center, pulling hoses right through businesses and even using buckets at one point to stop the spread. The fire danger throughout Southern California critical because of a Santa Ana windstorm that could bring gusts of 100 miles an hour to some areas. The National Weather Service going as far as to warn people to stay away from windows.
That's our news for now. From everyone at CFTK-TV News, I'm Kale Maslin. Thanks for watching.